Usually when I do stories, they come from my own head. And what I mean by that is, people always ask, hey, where do you get ideas for stories? How do you get those started? And they can come from anywhere, genuinely. It can be a song I listen to, it can be going for a walk, or going for a hike, or going for a swim, or looking at a specific scene, or seeing a movie or TV show. There can be a lot of things that give me ideas for stories, and it's not just one specific place. And yeah, sometimes ideas for stories will come to me by request or from people talking to me. But usually when people come to me with, hey, I have an idea for a story, usually those don't go anywhere for me. And that's mostly because they're not my ideas. There are exceptions to that rule, sure. Nomad is a great example. Jay came to me saying, hey, would you mind writing a story around this picture? I did, turned into something huge, and we both just kept it going. Sometimes that can happen. But more often than not, if someone says, hey, can you write a story based on this or a story based on that, then usually it doesn't go anywhere with me. It's actually kind of funny. After I wrote Metamorphosis, or at least started writing Metamorphosis anyway, a story about a young man who wakes up as a girl, people came to me assuming that I just write stories like that all the time. And they're like, oh, well, what if you did it under these circumstances? Or what if you wrote something like that under this circumstance? And I'm like, I don't write those stories all the time. I think it's entertaining. I think it's an engaging story premise, but I don't think I can do it well, and that's always been a problem for me. I've always been of that mind that I'm never going to be able to recapture what Metamorphosis was in terms of what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be a character study. I wanted it to be something that dives into the idea of not only what it is to be a man, but also what it is to be a woman, what it is to be surrounded by people who know you one way but not another way, to be able to have an outsider's perspective looking in on you, who you are and what you represent and what you stand for. My goal was not to make it a gender identity story. My goal was to make it more of a character introspection, which I really wanted it to be. And I've tried to redo that in other stories sometimes, but I never think I don't think I'll ever get it the way I wanted to, like with Metamorphosis. I'm trying some new stories now, and one of them actually was recommended by Hannah, which is very strange because, like I said, usually when people recommend stories to me, they don't go anywhere. I'm just kind of like, okay, well, I'll try it, and then I'll go one or two chapters in and go, nah, this isn't working, fam, I can't do it. But this one, we're actually going pretty far in. The story is called Witch's Pilgrimage. The story is an isekai, and for those of you who don't know what isekai is, I'll briefly explain. Isekai is a genre of manga and anime, because it comes from that, wherein the main character is a person who comes from a different world, usually our world, and they end up being reincarnated, transformed, or just teleported into an alternate world, which is usually high fantasy or RPG related. Good examples of this would be Rising of the Shield Hero, Sword Art Online, that time I got reincarnated as a slime, the Saga of Tanya the Evil. These are stories wherein the main character is teleported into a new world or reality, either by choice or by accident. I think the very first example of isekai that I can think of would be Inuyasha, where Kagome, the main female lead, can travel back to fantasy Edo Japan by going down a well. It doesn't quite work the same way isekai does. Usually isekai is more along the lines of reincarnation, where the person who gets sent to that world has no hope of getting back or can't get back without a lot of help. Kagome could go back and forth as she wanted to. So there is that to consider, but I digress. Point is, Witch's Pilgrimage follows the story of a scientist named Daniel who dreams of creating a warp hole project where people can actually teleport from one place to the other by using a warp hole that he is creating, like almost like a gate passageway that you could walk through and end up somewhere else. He thinks he's cracked the code on how to do that. Turns out he didn't. He messed up the formula, and when he tried to activate it too early, it ended up sucking him in and destroying his body, and he ends up being taken to a new world. But since his body was destroyed, the entity or deity of that world, known as the Great Magic, rebuilds his body, but as a female this time. Like I said, I was trying to recapture the metamorphosis idea, and Hannah wanted me to try, so she encouraged me to go this route. She actually said, if you want to try to recapture metamorphosis, this might be a good way to do it. So we gave it a shot. Basically, in this world, it is a fantasy world. There are several... magic is the main thing. I mean, their whole religion is built around, there's this entity called the Great Magic, who, in their benevolence, gave magic to humankind. And magic is broken down into 8 schools. You have 5 schools, which are the basic elemental magics. You have fire, you have water, you have earth, you have wind. You get the point. But then there are 3 others, which are physical, which is basically like being able to transform yourself for others. There's mind, basically like creating illusions and things like that. And then there's ethereal, which is the hardest school of magic to learn, and that basically deals with space, time, and all that kind of stuff. The idea is, when he gets into this world, he is found by a priest of the great magic. And he explains the only way you're going to be able to get back to your world is if you can master ethereal magic, which is very difficult to do because there's no current masters of it. Supposedly, a master of it only comes along once every few hundred years. And frankly, it's difficult for you to master because the current magical government has forbidden the study of any more than one type of magic. It's their way of policing the people. People are not allowed to study more than one form of magic. You can only learn one. If you want to learn water, that's what you're going to learn. If you want to learn earth, you're going to learn earth. You're only limited to one. Exceptions to those rules are priests like him who are allowed to learn up to 3, or members of the government who can learn as much as they like to. It's the way the government keeps control of the people. People who are not government employees or priests who try to learn more than one type of magic are referred to as witches, and witches are highly illegal. However, if Daniel is going, or now called Danielle, is going to find a way to get back home, she has no choice but to study other forms of magic, which is going to be difficult because in order to study any other form of magic, they also have to accept the rule of the great magic, which is their religion. And he, as a solid scientist who believes in facts and theory over faith and witchcraft, he's having a lot of trouble accepting that there could be any higher power than him or powers and things that he can't understand. So it's not just a study in his bodily change, but also a change in his whole outlook, like a change in how things function, like faith over material things, mind over matter, having to accept there are real consequences to learning this kind of stuff, and it's been a lot of fun. I've also enjoyed kind of playing with Danielle's story and Danielle interacting with other characters. For example, she comes across a unicorn. This was Hannah's creation, this character of Agnes was the name of the unicorn, and I love this character. She has the ability to transform herself between a human female form and her unicorn form, which is what gets Danielle so excited. It makes her think, hey, this Agnes might know about some schools of magic that she could teach me. And she's like, maybe she could teach me how to do this stuff. But Agnes is a unicorn, and in this world, unicorns are endangered animals because since they're such highly magical creatures, the government, the magical council, does not like unicorns because they believe that they're a heresy upon the great magic and try to wipe them out when they find them. So Agnes is just trying to keep her race alive and has no interest in getting involved with someone who wants to become a witch. But as Danielle points out, you and I are both criminals. I'm trying to study multiple forms of this magic stuff, and you're just trying to stay alive. Maybe we should work together. So it's kind of becoming a sort of semi-adventure where Danielle is having to learn to accept things that before she would have called poppycock and nonsense. Meanwhile, also having to recognize that a part of who she used to be, this scientist who neglected so much of his former life and former world around him, might have been wrong about a lot of things. It's been a very entertaining story, and Hannah rides me a lot to get it done. She's always saying, when's the next chapter? I want the next chapter. When are you going to write the next one? And it gets hard sometimes. That does get annoying every now and then because it's like, dang, give me some time. It takes time to write these. But part of it is my fault. I'll take some responsibility for that. Ever since starting the YouTube channel, it's been harder and harder to just sit down and write stuff. But this was always a story that I thought was kind of neat. And it's weird because, like I said, I don't normally write long-running stories based on what people request, but this was a request from Hannah, and it was an attempt to try to recapture the magic that I started with Metamorphosis. I don't know if it's going to capture it exactly the way I wanted to, but still, it's something out there, and it was a unique idea. So still, thank you guys for watching this video. As always, I love sharing these kind of stories with you. It's kind of fun to just hash out what ideas were created and what thoughts came to my mind when I was designing this stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that you will subscribe and continue to follow my work. More stuff is coming, guys. Thank you so much, and I will see you in my next video. Take care.